G'day and welcome to the dried oat extract brewing video. It's a bit exciting, isn't it? If you haven't seen the dried malt extract introduction video, there's a link in the description, you'll find it there. Of course, I know that nobody's got the dried oat extract yet, but the methods I use in this video are universal. You can do the same thing with light dried malt extract. The beer's not going to be exactly the same because it hasn't got the oats in it, but the methods are solid. And if you stick around to the end, especially the beginners, I'll go through a few other things you can change in this recipe, and you can use these methods for different styles of beer as well. Let's get into it. We start with a clean and sanitized fermenter. For the beginners here, it doesn't matter what sort of fermenter, it can be your Cooper's fermenter, any fermenter you have, it doesn't matter. Just make sure it's clean. Cleaning really is more important than the sanitation, because you can't sanitize dirt with a simple splash of Stellar San or Star San. So get it sparkling clean and a quick splash of sanitizer for insurance. Today I'm using a Cooper's Pale Ale tin. When cold, this stuff is really thick, like a thick honey. So take the top off, get rid of the yeast, take the label off, and just stick it in a bucket of hot water. That hot water I just got out of the tap, and just leave it there while I'm getting the rest of things ready. When I come to use it, it should pour much easier. If you happen to have one of these fermenters, you run a little bit of sanitizer through the pickup tube, and I'll show you the easiest way to get these lids off. Of course, to run the sanitizer through the pickup tube, I had to have a little bit of pressure in there. But while the pressure is in there, it's really hard to undo that locking ring on top. So you let out a little bit of pressure until you can undo that locking ring. Once you start undoing it, just take it slow and be careful because the pressure will lift up that lid by itself. You don't want to go too fast or that lid might fly up and hit the ceiling or worse, your face. Once you hear it start hissing, you know it's loose, and you can let the rest of the pressure out by the PRV valve if you like. Once the pressure is out, you undo it, and it just comes off. Easy as that. I throw all the tools I'm going to use into that stainless saucepan, can opener, stirring spoon, and whack the lid in there as well. Then simply tip out the sanitizer into the saucepan. A little bit of foil, cover the top of my funnel and the top of the fermenter. I'll make a little bit of a rough guess here. I want about 22 litres at the end, and I'm going to be adding near 2 litres out of the Cooper's tin, plus a kilo of light dry malt, half a kilo of dextrose, half a kilo of the oat malt, so that's going to take up some space. So I'm just going to fill my fermenter to 19 litres, and that should be about enough water to do the whole batch. I like to take the chlorine and chloramine out of my water. To do this, you could use half a Camden tablet, but I use about 0.3 of a gram of sodium metabisulfite. Just a tiny amount. I'll whack that in. That'll get rid of the chlorine and chloramines. If you're not worried about that, you can leave them in. I give it a stir, and that works just about immediately. The old school way of leaving the water out overnight to get rid of chlorine doesn't work anymore due to chloramines. I'm going to do a little 4 litre boil. That'll do 2 things, give me somewhere to steep some hops and also heat up the fermenter because my groundwater's a little cold today. You can use a siphon. I chose to do the hard way and pick up the fermenter and pour off about 4 litres. I pour that into another stock pot so I can bring it to the boil. Of course you can do this on the stove, barbecue, wherever you want to. I have a cheap little Kogan induction plate I bought several years ago, so I can do it out in the garage. And it makes it easier to video for you guys. I'm only going to boil 500 grams of the oat malt to soak the hops in, or steep the hops in. So the rest of the dried malt and dextrose and Cooper's tin will go straight into the fermenter. I haven't used the dried oat extract yet, and I'm not sure if that clumps like light dry malt. So I'll put that into cold water as well. I'll give it a stir. You can see it's clumping up a little bit in the water, and then I'll put the heat on, bring it to the boil. Make sure you keep stirring just in case there's any clumps on the bottom. You don't want it to scorch. Once that's boiling, I'll add 15 grams of Citra hops and let that boil for 5 minutes. You'll see in the recipe I said 10 minutes, but I'm going to boil it for 5 minutes and then turn off the heat and let it sit there in the hot wort for another 5 minutes. And then if needed, I'll add some of the cooled water out of the fermenter into that pot just to cool it off a bit for the next round of hops. So it's been 5 minutes since I turned it off. So I'll check the temperature. The temperature's down to the low 80s, as you can see. So I'm going to add the other hops. I add 20 grams of Idaho 7 and 20 grams of Nectaron. I'll give it a stir, make sure those hops break up, and I'll let that sit there for another 15-20 minutes. You can stir occasionally through that time if you like, just to make sure it's all nice and stirred. And while that's steeping, we'll get on to the other ingredients. I always see people trying to add light dry malt into hot water so it dissolves quicker. And the trouble with that, any sort of steam around your light dry malt or even dextrose, it can clump up and it gets real messy and it sticks around the bag and it's a real pain. I'll give you a big tip, just do it in cold water. Mix it in first, then you can heat it up later if you need to. But as you'll see here, it mixes in just fine in cold water. First I'm going to add 500 grams of dextrose, then 1 kilo of light dry malt. See how easy that goes in? It's not sticking everywhere. That's because the water's cold. And give it a good mix. You'll also get less clumping adding it to so much water. When you try to add a lot to a little bit of water, you'll get more clumping. And just try not to bash into the sides of the vessel with the metal spoon too much. You want to avoid scratching it. I'll give you another tip. At this stage I've left the valve shut on the fermenter, so it's much easier to mix in. If I leave it open, the dry malt or the Cooper's can goop could slip down into that bottom yeast collection vessel and be much harder to mix in. The yeast will eventually get it anyway, but it's just simple to leave it shut, mix it all up, and then open it. Then I'll take out my warmed up Cooper's can. I'll give it a dry off, so I'm not dripping any dirty water into the fermenter. Open it up, pour it in. And give it a good mix. Once that time's up, I'll check the temperature again, and I can see I'm still in the 70s. So I need to be careful in this fermenter. If you have one of the old school fermenters, you probably don't have to worry too much. But this fermenter can only take up to 50 degrees, and I don't want to splash it on anywhere. But luckily for me, the funnel will channel it into the middle of the fermenter, and if I just take my time adding it slowly, I shouldn't have any worries. I'm also going to strain it. You probably don't need to. You can add the hops to the vessel if you like, but I'd rather keep them out. I'm just going to take my time so it mixes in well. I don't want that hop water sitting on top or anything.
I've seen hop teas become very popular the last few years where you just steep your hops in hot water, but you're much better off steeping your hops in some wort, whether that be the light dry malt. I was just using the oats today because they were new, and it tends to bind those hop flavours and aromas into the beer better. Also reduces a little bit of the harsh bitterness you can get from just doing it in water. So I let that drain. I don't squish the hops down. I don't want to be pushing them through the screen. It doesn't take long to drain. I check the temperature again. It's about 26 degrees, and that's perfectly fine to add the yeast because I'm going to put it in my fermenting fridge and bring that temperature down to 19 degrees within an hour or so. So I add the yeast. This time I'm using Verdant. Normally I'd use 2 packs, but I realise a lot of beginners will probably only use 1 pack. If I didn't have a fermenting fridge, I'd probably try and get it a little bit cooler. I'll put a wet towel on it and a fan or something, because if we start fermenting at 26 degrees, it's probably going to heat up a few more degrees. That's just going to cause off flavours. So try and get it down at 18, 19. I then put some pressure in the fermenter, just enough so I can set the spunning valve. Put the spunning valve on,
and I just set it to a low PSI, somewhere between 3 and 5. I hear a lot of absolute rubbish on the internet about fermenting under pressure and it suppressing esters. Yes, it can, but you need much, much higher pressures than 2 or 3 PSI. I can tell you I've tried dozens of strains of yeast and they all work perfectly fine and give their esters under low pressures. I like to go under low pressure all the time just to trap in those flavours, keep oxygen out. If you have no temperature control for your ferment, yes, you can consider high pressure to suppress the off flavours you get from high temperature. Otherwise, it just brings a whole heap of other problems. For instance, when you're dry hopping, you can add the dry hops and it can all volcano out and make a big mess. If you start at these low pressures, that won't happen when you dry hop, and you can always raise the pressure at the end of the ferment if you like.
Don't forget to open this up.
So I came out a little bit under volume. I probably could have started with 20 or 21 litres. But with my 19 litres and all the ingredients, I came out at 1.061. This is a couple of hours after pitching the yeast. You can see things are starting to happen. What I missed in the brewing video, I did add firm cap to this brew. So you're not going to see much krausen, unfortunately. It's really handy if you're brewing in smaller fermenters. This is the next day. There's hardly any krausen, but you can see the bubbling happening. And we dropped around 15 points. The next day again, we've dropped 16 points. I just thought I'd show you how I take a reading in this vessel. I just have a little hose with a party tap. I always clear out the pickup tube and the party tap if it's got any beer from yesterday left in it. I have to filter my sample to use my reader, but you could go straight into a hydro tube if you wanted to. Always remember to wipe and wash your quick disconnect, otherwise it'll get grubby and sticky. Now we're down to 1024 here. This was a decision I made to dry hop at 1024, especially because it's a hazy beer. If it was a normal, any other sort of beer, I probably would have left it another day till dry hop, but I hadn't dry hopped yet. I'm only doing a single dry hop. I don't see the need to do a double dry hop. The advantage of this fermenter, I can get rid of the yeast container. If your fermenter can't do that, that's perfectly fine too. But I like to close the valve, let the pressure out of the container by undoing one of those lids. That's especially important if you're fermenting under high pressures. I'm only fermenting low, but I'll still do it anyway, so it saves me copping a shower of yeast. And you can see there I use a plastic bag just to prevent some mess. Get that out of the way, give it a spray for a clean, and that's done. So we go back to the top and I do it exactly the same as you saw me do it before. There's pressure in the fermenter and I'll use that pressure to release the lid. I can't undo the locking ring straight away, so I'll let a little bit of pressure out till I can undo the locking ring. I undo it till I hear the hiss and I can tell that the lid's been opened. Let the rest of the pressure out. Take the lid off. Add the hops, and do it back up again.
So if you can hear the gas coming out of there, that's because we added the hops and it's excited all that CO2 that's in suspension, and the hops are moving around and doing their thing and breaking up, and that's just pure CO2 coming out of the fluid. The krausen is still there. I haven't had to purge. If I purge, I usually push the krausen out of the way, and there's still oxygen in the top here. It's no good. So I just let it do it naturally. So I'll come back in half hour and crank that down again. At that stage you can add more pressure if you want to set this accurately, because just cranking it down you're not sure what you're setting it to. It's still fermenting a little bit, so I'm going to bump the temperature up to maybe 20-21 degrees and let it go. At this stage I'll turn the cooling off totally, the cooling cycle off. If you can't do that, just unplug the fridge so it's not cooling it down anymore. It can just, if it can free rise, it'll free rise. And I'll do the opposite when I come to cold crash. I'll unplug the heating totally and just put the cooling on. It just stops it fighting against each other sometimes. Waste of energy.
And the next day, we're down to 1014. I'm not exactly sure how far it's going to drop, but it's sitting at 21 degrees in the fermenter right now. So within 3 or 4 days, that'll be well and truly finished. After that, I'll cold crash it. For a beer like this with all those hops in it, I suggest cold crashing at least 2 days, but preferably 3 or 4 days. People talk about hop burn. Most of the time, it's hop particles that they've put into their keg or beers, A good long cold crash will get rid of those, and your hop burn will be a thing of the past. So that's it. I just had a little taste. It's still warm. It still hasn't quite finished fermenting, but I think it's going to be all right. There's a couple of things I wanted to say, and one of them was about, I guess you'd call it the lower temperature whirlpool hops I added at the end, the second batch of hops. I only ever, and even rarely then, do low temperature whirlpools or steeps, like lower than 80 degree things. And it's got to be an NIPA or a Hazy IPA. Otherwise, it's just a waste of hops, a waste of time, and a waste of energy. You'll get more out of your hops using the water a bit hotter, and you'll still get the same flavours and aromas, but using less hops. There's a real trend at the moment to do these 80 degree or low temperature sort of steeps or whirlpools for every beer, and it's a little bit ridiculous. You use more hops to get the same qualities out of it. It's a waste of time, energy. You just don't need to do it for any other style of beer. There's no benefits. I mentioned 2 packs of yeast. I always like to use 2 packs of yeast. It does get a little bit expensive sometimes, but it just gives it, it's like insurance. You know you're going to get a nice strong ferment, no stalling at the start or at the end. It'll power through all the way, and you don't have anything to worry about on the yeast side of things. You could change the style of yeast for this for sure. You could use an English style of yeast, like say SO4 or Nottingham, something like a London Fog, London Ale 3. Anything like that will help keep a bit of body and give you a bit of haze. You could even try the Cooper's yeast. I can't say I've tried it for that sort of style of beer. I also could have thrown that packet of Cooper's yeast that I wasn't using into the boil, and it would act like a yeast nutrient. And I'll just mention the dextrose too. Yeah, I use half a kilo of dextrose. It's not going to thin out my beer. You'll hear a lot of people say that. The only real way sugar can thin out your beer is if you swap ingredients. So if you have a recipe that you do, say, all grain, or you use all light dry malt, and you swap out a kilo of light dry malt for a kilo of dextrose, then yeah, it's going to ferment out a little bit further, because light dry malt has a lot of unfermentables in it, where the dextrose doesn't. Adding a little bit to your beers doesn't thin out your beers. And actually using it to raise alcohol, more alcohol can actually give you more mouthfeel. So don't be afraid to use a little bit of dextrose here and there. All right, I could go on with hints and tips for hours here, but we'll stop here. And in about a week's time, we'll be able to have it in the glass and we'll do a tasting. I'm looking forward to it.
So that's it. It's in the fridge right next to me. I can't wait to try it. It's really exciting. I love it when you get new products because it doesn't happen that often. And this sounds great. So again, a big thank you goes out to Kegland for sending me this to try. I'm sure Kegland will let you know when it's available to buy, and so will I. I'll let you know as soon as I know. So thanks for watching. If you liked the video, press like, share it to your friends. This is exciting news. Have a beer with them and chat about it. And please consider checking out my Patreon, where I went in a little bit more depth on this a couple of days ago. There is now a free tier on Patreon, so you can join. You can see some of my updates. You won't be able to see all the videos, of course, because that sort of defeats the purpose of Patreon, but you can keep up to date and you might get an idea on what I do over there. I'll put a QR code on the screen and that'll take you to Patreon. In my videos lately, you would have seen the QR codes. They are for products I'm using at the time, or like this one is for Patreon. And if you're watching on the telly, you can just scan it from your phone and it'll take you directly there. Big thank you goes out to my patrons, and I'll see you in the next one. Without my patrons, I couldn't do this. Thank you. Much love. Get a smelly finger at the Village Twin. Cheers. Ah, the good old days.